So you want to own a coffee shop. You buy the beans, you pull the espresso, you collect the money, a $5 latte that costs you 50 cents in raw milk and coffee. That is a 90% margin, the best in any food business. So here's the question that should stop you cold before starting. If the margin is that good, why do most coffee shops fail? Some industry surveys put the closure rate near 60% within 3 years. The answer is that you are not really in the coffee business. The coffee is the cheapest and least important thing in the whole building. Tonight we break down what you are actually buying when you buy a cafe. We will follow the real money, from the first dollar spent to the last. We will see why the cup lies to you about the business behind it. And by the end, you will see the machine hiding behind the counter. Let's start with what almost nobody understands about a coffee shop. A coffee shop looks like a place that sells drinks to people. It is actually a business that rents one narrow window of time. A busy cafe does most of its sales in 3 morning hours. Between roughly 6:30 and 9:30, the entire business is decided. Outside that window, you are paying full rent for a nearly empty room. So you are not selling coffee, you are selling speed during rush hour. The faster the line moves, the more of that window you can capture. A slow barista is not a small annoyance, it is lost revenue forever. Every customer who leaves the line is money that never comes back. Now hold that idea, because it explains everything that follows tonight. Before any of that, you have to survive opening the doors at all. And most people who picture owning a cafe never see this part. They imagine the finished room, warm and full, not the bill behind it. The total cost to open a coffee shop in the United States runs from $80,000 to $300,000 in most markets. Most new owners land between $150,000 and $200,000. And the single biggest expense is not the machine everyone pictures first. It is the build-out, turning an empty box into a working kitchen. Plumbing, electrical, ventilation, counters, flooring, and a hood system for food. Build-out alone can run $80,000 to $150,000 easily. This is why smart operators hunt for a space that was already a cafe. Taking over a former restaurant with the plumbing installed saves a fortune. The espresso machine itself, the thing you imagined, is almost an afterthought. A commercial machine runs $10,000 to $35,000 depending on grade. Add grinders, a brewer, refrigeration, an ice machine, and water filtration. Bad water quietly ruins even the best beans, so filtration is never optional. Most shops need 2 grinders, one for espresso and one for decaf. Your total equipment bill lands somewhere between $30,000 and $60,000. Then come the quiet costs that ambush every first-time owner at once. Licenses, permits, and health inspections that delay your opening for months. Legal and accounting fees, initial inventory, furniture, and a point-of-sale system. And then the number that quietly decides whether you live or die. Working capital, the cash reserve that keeps you breathing before profit arrives. Most coffee shops take 6 to 18 months to turn any profit. That means a year of losing money every single month while you build. Experts say hold 3 to 6 months of full expenses in reserve. That is another $40,000 to $100,000 sitting untouched. It cannot be borrowed, and it cannot come from your first sales. It has to be real cash, set aside before you ever open. Running out of that cash is the #1 killer of new shops. Undercapitalization, in the language of the industry, kills more cafes than bad coffee. Not a bad location, not weak drinks, simply running out of runway. Add it all up for a realistic mid-range shop opening its doors. Build out, equipment, inventory, permits, furniture, and reserve reach $190,000. Now the doors are open and the real machine starts to run. Here is how a coffee shop actually makes money, layer by layer. The first layer is the drinks, the base of the entire business. Drip coffee earns you around $2.50 in profit on every cup sold. Espresso drinks, the lattes and mochas, earn closer to $3 each. This is the layer everyone sees, but it is only the foundation, and notice how small that per cup profit really is on its own. You need to sell hundreds of cups a day just to cover the rent. A single slow morning erases the drink's profit for the entire day. That is why no serious shop survives on the drinks layer alone. The second layer is the attach, the food sold beside the drink. The customer who adds a $4 pastry nearly doubles the whole ticket. That pastry costs you little and rides on a customer already inside. Getting them through the door was the expensive part you already paid. Selling them a second item is almost pure profit on top. The third layer is retail, the bags of beans and branded mugs, gift cards, cold brew cans, and merchandise that carry your name home. Each one stacks margin without adding a single minute of labor. The fourth layer is the one that most owners never even build. Catering orders, office coffee contracts, wholesale beans to local restaurants nearby, subscription bean clubs that charge a card every month automatically. None of these show up in the daydream of owning a cafe. But for the shops that survive, they become a meaningful slice of income. And notice something about these four layers stacked on top of each other. The drinks layer depends entirely on foot traffic during the morning rush. But food, retail, and contracts keep earning long after that rush ends. The shops that only sell the first layer live and die by the window. The shops that build all four spread their income across the whole day. That is the quiet difference between a fragile cafe and a durable one. Now here is the counterintuitive part that sinks so many owners. More customers in your seats does not always mean more money. A table full of laptops for 4 hours generates almost no revenue. That camper bought one small coffee and occupies a 4-seat table. During your only profitable window, that seat is worth far more. Filled seats are not the same thing as filled cash registers. This is the coffee shop version of a truth from bigger businesses. Occupancy is not income, and it fools owners into feeling safe. There is a second counterintuitive detail hiding in the layout itself. The most valuable spot in your shop is not the largest table. It is the few feet right beside the register where people wait. A small rack of pastries and snacks there sells almost by itself, because a customer already committed to buying will grab one more thing. Position, not square footage, decides what that space is really worth. The busiest shops design their whole counter around that single impulse moment. The same square foot can be worth pennies or gold in one room. A quiet table in the corner earns you almost nothing all day. That spot by the register earns you every single time someone waits. Where a thing sits matters more than how much room it takes. Now let's turn the machine around and look at the other side. Here is what it costs to keep those doors open every month. Rent is your first fixed cost, and location decides almost everything. A small cafe pays $2,000 to $10,000 in monthly rent. The cheap corner that nobody walks past is the most expensive kind. Then comes labor, the single largest monthly expense in this business. Payroll runs $8,000 to $25,000 a month for staff. Labor eats 25 to 40% of every dollar you take in. Next is the cost of goods, the coffee, milk, and food itself. That is another 30 to 35% of your total sales. Here is the rule that separates the survivors from the casualties. Your prime cost is labor plus cost of goods added together. In a healthy shop, prime cost stays around 55 to 60%. Push past 65%, and the math quietly turns against you. Then comes the rest of the bleed you can never escape. Utilities, insurance, marketing, repairs, and card processing fees on every swipe. And if you borrowed to open, a loan payment on top of all. Add it together, and a typical shop spends $38,000 a month. That bill arrives on the first, whether a customer walks in or not. And here is the trap door that new owners discover the hard way. Those fixed costs do not shrink when the shop sits half empty. The rent, the lights, and the staff are the same on a slow day. So when sales dip, the cost per customer quietly climbs against you. A slow month does not just mean less revenue. It means thinner survival. Seasonality makes this trapdoor swing open at the worst possible times. Winter and fall are your gold months, driven by hot drinks and holidays. Summer is dangerous, as foot traffic can drop sharply almost overnight. January is brutal, when customers cut spending right after the holiday season. A shop that ignores this cycle runs out of cash in the quiet months. The best owners bank the good months to carry the empty ones. Now you understand the real question at the heart of this business. It was never whether you can sell coffee at 90% margin. It is whether you can sell enough during that narrow window daily to cover $38,000 in bills that never take a day off. To see how the smart money actually plays this game, look at Starbucks. Starbucks began in 1971 as a single bean shop in Seattle. A man named Howard Schultz joined the company in the early 1980s. He traveled to Italy and saw something the founders had completely missed. The espresso bar was not selling coffee. It was selling a place to be. Schultz called it the third place, between your home and your work. He bought the company in 1987 and rebuilt it around that single idea. The product was never the coffee. It was the daily routine itself. The warm room, the familiar cup, the ritual you build into your morning. That habit is what people actually pay $5 every day to keep. Schultz understood a second thing that looks insane from the outside. He deliberately opened Starbucks stores close together in the same neighborhoods. New stores would cannibalize sales from the older stores nearby on purpose. Analysts thought he was crazy for stealing from his own locations. But density made the brand unavoidable and cut delivery and marketing costs. Each store lost a little, but the cluster as a whole won. It was the same logic malls used. Position matters more than space. By the mid-2000s, Starbucks was opening stores at a staggering pace. At its peak, it was opening several new stores every single day worldwide. The routine that Schultz sold had become a habit for millions of people. And a habit, unlike a product, brings the same customer back tomorrow. That is the real asset a coffee shop builds, one morning at a time. Then in 2008, the machine that Schultz built nearly broke apart. The company had expanded too fast and the routine had grown stale. Schultz returned as chief executive to save the business he had created. He closed around 600 underperforming stores across the United States. He even shut every store for a single afternoon to retrain baristas. The lesson was brutal and simple for every small owner to hear. Even the giant that invented the modern cafe could overbuild and stumble. If Starbucks can lose the routine, your single shop can lose it faster. Before the numbers, here are 3 mistakes that quietly kill new owners. The first is signing the wrong lease before you truly understand it. New owners fall in love with a space and sign a long lease. A lease that traps them even after the business has clearly failed. Always have an attorney read the whole lease before you sign anything. The second mistake is underpricing the menu out of fear or guilt. They charge $3.50 for a latte and destroy their own thin margins. That $1.50 they gave away was the entire profit on the sale. The third mistake is hiring wrong, either too fast or not at all. Hire too many and labor costs sink you before the traffic arrives. Hire nobody and you burn out alone by the 4th exhausting month. The winners scale their staff carefully to the traffic they actually have. Now let's put real numbers on a single mid-range shop, illustratively. Imagine a neighborhood cafe pulling in around $40,000 monthly. Rent takes $6,000, and labor takes $14,000 of that. The coffee, milk, and food itself eat another $13,000. Utilities, insurance, marketing, and repairs take $3,000 more each month. A loan payment on the build-out takes the final $2,000. Against $38,000 in expenses, that leaves $2,000 in profit. On $40,000 in sales, that is a margin of 5%. Read that number again, because it destroys the 90% daydream. The cup carries a 90% margin. The business carries 5. That gap between the cup and the business is the whole story. Everything between the bean and your bank account eats that margin alive. So let's walk the first year the way it actually happens. Month 1 is the grand opening, with curious crowds out the door. You think you have made it, but this is only the honeymoon. Month 2 arrives, and the curiosity crowd vanishes almost overnight. This is the first gut punch, learning who your real regulars are, and there are far fewer of them than you had ever hoped. Month 3, you are working 80 hours and paying yourself nothing. You are the barista, the manager, the cleaner, and the accountant. Months 4 and 5 are the grind that breaks most owners. Sales climb slowly as regulars build the habit you are selling, but you are still bleeding cash and watching the reserve shrink weekly. Month 6 brings the first small breakthrough, if you make it there. The morning rush finally turns consistent, day after day, week after week. Months 7 through 9, You learn your numbers and cut the waste. You might hit your first month where you almost break even. Months 10 through 12 are the real decision point of the year. By now you know deep down if this business truly works. Your reserve balance tells the whole story of these 12 hard months. Manage the cash well and you end year 1 bruised but alive. Run out in month 8 and you are already another statistic. The owners who quit almost always quit between month 3 and 8. Not because the shop was failing, but because the cash ran out first. So here are the 2 years that decide the same building's fate. In the good year, you own a well-placed shop with strong regulars. Drinks, food attach, and retail together produce steady, predictable monthly income. By year 3 or 4, you run a healthy 15% margin. On $450,000 in yearly sales, that is real money, roughly $60,000 to $70,000 in genuine annual profit. In the bad year, a competitor opens 2 blocks down the street. Your morning window thins as regulars drift to the newer place. Rent, insurance, and wages keep climbing regardless of your falling sales. The fixed costs do not care that fewer customers walk through the door. Your 5% margin flips to a loss you fund from reserve. And a 5% margin gives you almost no room to absorb a shock. A 10% drop in sales does not cut your profit by 10%. It wipes the profit out entirely and pushes you straight into the red. That is the hidden fragility of a business running on thin margins. The same building, the same beans, 2 completely different outcomes. The difference was never the coffee, it was the machine underneath. This is the truth that no daydream about owning a cafe includes. A coffee shop looks like a warm room that sells you a drink. Underneath, it is a tightly wound machine of rent, labor, and time. Every part depends on that narrow morning window staying full and fast. The coffee is the cheapest thing you sell inside the entire building. What you are really selling is the habit and the room around it. Just as Schultz learned, the routine is the product, not the cup. And there is a deeper reason the biggest fortunes come from cafes. The real money is almost never in the very first shop you open. The first shop is a job that you happen to own outright. The wealth comes from the second shop, and then the third one. A second location spreads your fixed costs across much more total revenue. Your suppliers, your brand, and your systems now serve 2 shops at once. That is how a single cafe slowly becomes a small local chain. And a small chain is a business that can run without you standing there. So here is the one number to remember from all of this. It is not the 90% margin on a single latte. It is the months of cash you hold in reserve at opening. Because you do not win this game by making great coffee. You win by surviving long enough for the neighborhood to need you. The coffee is the easy part. The survival is the whole game. If this breakdown showed you the machine the dream never did, subscribe. Next time we break down the economics of owning a food truck. Lower cost to open, but a completely different set of deciding numbers. A business with no rent, but nowhere to hide when the crowd thins. The doors are open. Now you know what actually keeps them open.